And now we can start for real.
All right.
All right. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the July San Francisco Bay Area PUG Meetup. Today we are having a Pat Wright talking to us about speaking and community involvement for the introvert. Just a few notes. This meeting is being recorded. If you turn on your microphone and ask a question, your voice will be recorded. If you turn on your camera when you ask your question, that will also be recorded. If you leave your camera off, it will only record your voice. I'm Stacey Hazler. I work at PGX, and I am your host for today. Let's see. Pat is open to questions during the presentation. So if you have a question, you can either pop it into the chat window and I can read it out to him, or you can raise your hand and ask it yourself. And of course, also Q&A at the end. If you're using an older version of the app, you don't have the raise hand function, so you will have to use the chat to send your question. Let's see. If you have any technical issues, please send a chat message to the organizers group, and one of us will help you. San Francisco Bay Area PUG is affiliated with the United States PostgreSQL Association, aka PGUS. PGUS sponsors us for our meetup fees and other support, and we thank PGUS for that. As a disclaimer, I'm also the president of PGUS. Our video sponsor is PGX. PGX handles the recording, does the editing, and makes the video available on YouTube. So we'd like to thank PGX for that support. Also a disclosure, I work at PGX. So now that we've gotten all the preliminaries out of the way, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Pat Wright. Pat has been a DBA for more than 15 years, working in the big data space with Hadoop and Elasticsearch for 3 years. Has been on Postgres for a few years. He also runs the Salt Lake City PUG. He's been a SQL Server MVP. He served on the past board of directors and organizes several other user groups. Pat is a member of the PGS Conference Committee and is a key organizer for PGConf New York and PG Day Chicago. Pat also has a night job running Utah Geek Events, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which runs events for the tech community. Utah Geek Events also partners with Utah SQL Saturday, SharePoint Saturday, Utah Game Jam, and many other conferences and user groups. And I'm guessing, Pat, sleep's optional for you.
It is, and last night I didn't get a lot of sleep, so hopefully this presentation goes well.
Well, thank you for being with us today. I'm going to turn off my camera and turn the floor over to you.
Okay. Great. And thank you for the introduction, Stacey, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'll put a shameless plug in here too, and I'll say that I'm part of the committee for PG New York City coming up. PG New York City is coming up very soon. It's coming up October, let me see if I get my dates right, 3rd to the 5th. So go check it out, PG New York City 2023. We definitely want to see you out to it. I'm the sponsor coordinator for it, so I'm helping with everything related to it. So today, and this presentation is a lot about these events too. Stacey mentioned I do a lot of different events. I do a lot of different things. This is really talking about these sort of things. And whether you're doing this at a Postgres users group, at a big conference or anything else, this is what you should be really involved with. I'll talk about this a lot, that I'm very passionate about the community and passionate about getting involved because it makes a huge difference in your career. A lot of people will say to me is that, well, we wanted a technical presentation on this or that, or they wanted to learn something, but I'll tell you right now, this presentation can make more difference in your career than many of the technical ones you attend. I'll make that statement. You're welcome to disagree with me. Feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand later on. But I can tell you right now, what you do in the community can make a bigger difference than anything else. So, all right, so let's get started on this. So this is kind of the about me. You'll see this slide again at the bottom. And I will happily post these slides inside the meetup link or wherever we need to post them. None of these slides are confidential or anything like that. So if you need any of this information, please feel free to just reach out to me later. It's very easy to get to. And like I said, I will show this slide again at the end when we're answering questions. Feel free to ask questions anytime during this presentation, and feel free to interrupt me at any time. I did this presentation in Chicago, and Bruce was in the audience, and it was wonderful because we just sat here and talked a lot about stories of things we had done or the presentations we had given in different places, and it was a great interactive experience. And so I really like that. That's that there. Pat Wright is sharing, but nothing on the screen. So you're not seeing, you're sharing your screen. Okay, let's see. I can pin my screen like that. I'm seeing it okay.
Yeah, we're seeing your screen, so you're good.
Okay, so maybe John just has an issue on that. I'm gonna pin mine like that. Okay. So um I can see it too. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So the big question here is why. I always try to start with why in a lot of my presentations. I try to get everybody to understand why is it so important to be part of the community? Why is it so important to help others, to do presentations like this, to do these things? And I go back to this quote from Simon all the time. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's very, very important in our career is that people don't buy that you created the most great, wonderful technical application that you could out there. They buy that you helped them do something in their system. When you're a database person or a database administrator or anything else, you help people get things that you need to get done. And that's really what makes all the difference in the world. And by doing that thing, that's what they're really buying. Sure, you created a great replication script, you created a great backup script or something else, but the key thing here is that you really helped them, and that's what really matters. So being part of the community makes all the difference in the world when you're out there helping. And it'll launch your career in that people will know you from those things that you did. When you're standing up here and doing a presentation, whether you don't really do too well in the presentation. And now, don't get me wrong, you do need to do well in your presentation, but regardless, you're going to be seen as the expert on that topic when you're standing up there and presenting on it. When I did my first presentation on replication inside a Postgres event or something, I was seen as a replication expert. I'm like, I barely learned replication. I didn't know it too terribly well, but I was still seen as an expert doing it because I was up there talking about it and sharing it. Now, the other question you probably have while you're looking at this slide is, why do I have pictures of waterfalls on this slide? I have pictures of waterfalls on this slide because that's something I love to do. I'm an amateur photographer. I took the picture behind me. I take all the pictures that are pretty much in my slides. And I love to talk about these things because it drives my why. I want to spend more time taking pictures like this and everything else. So I drive myself to help other people to make sure that I have the time to do these things. So it's one of my passions in life. It's one of the things that drives me. And so I use that as a passion whenever I'm talking about it in a presentation. If you ever want to find out too, the picture on the left, the very long crack is a crack called the Zion's Narrows crack. Sorry, not Narrows, Subway. It's in a special trail called the Subway that you have to get a permit for. I have taken that picture now 3 times. It's almost killed me twice to get that picture. So I'm very happy that I finally got it. Okay, next slide. It looks like we're trying to get some of those things taken care of and those pieces. So I talk about this presentation about um, what you should do to pause your introverts, okay? So I know that a lot of you out there are like, wait a minute, I'm a database person, I'm an engineer, I'm a coder, I don't really like to talk to people. Pat, I can't do what you're doing. There's no way I can stand up in front of a bunch of people and do this presentation. I can't do it. Yes, you can. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit here about some of these steps of what you can do to help you get to that point, to help you try to get to those pieces. What I always tell people is a perfect story is there was an old movie out there. It wasn't too old, but it had a Matt Damon in it. It was called I Bought a Zoo. And he tells this perfect story inside this movie that he talks about it took him 20 seconds of courage to walk across a diner and ask his future wife whether or not he could sit with her and do something with her. That 20 seconds of courage changed his entire life, changed everything about him. That one little thing of saying, hey, I want to do this, I want to get over and talk to someone, that made all the difference. So when you have that 20 seconds of courage to do something like submit a presentation, when you have to submit a presentation with that 20 seconds of courage, you've now just changed your life because you're now in a point where you might be able to present to a big group. And I strongly suggest you start at something like this Postgres users group. users groups always need presenters. I'm sure that Stacy is smiling right now because we always need presenters. We do this every month. We always need presenters. We always need people coming in. So we will help you. We will coach you. And this is the perfect chance to try to get ready for something like a big conference or something else. These user groups are the place to do that. So if you can overcome your 20 seconds of courage and get that push of that button, say, I want to present, then you can get into that and you can start presenting. Presenting makes all the difference because you'll be seen in the community, and that will help you to get jobs in the future. I have a completely different presentation that talks about how to be prepared for layoffs. And one of the biggest things you can do to prepare for any layoff is present and speak to your community. By doing that, everyone to see happens, they're going to say, wait, I know that person. I watched a presentation by them. It was really informative. I want to hire them because they just got laid off, that sort of thing. So it's very important to do these sort of things. Um, Basically, take your 20 seconds of courage to submit your presentation. Now, I know what you're going to say to me. How do I write an abstract, a bio, all of these other things? We can work on that. That can all be set up. There's definitely lots of blog posts out there. You can ask people like myself. You can ask a lot of conferences out there, and they will give you support and tell you how to do those sort of things. That's not the toughest part. The toughest part is submitting and saying, yep, I actually want to present and do this. Another way you can get started with this to overcome this is present to your own team. I tell people a lot that a DBA or a database person presents all the time. All the time you are talking to a developer and you are telling, or an engineer, and you're telling them, hey, I don't want you to do it this way. I want you to do it this way. You need to learn this performance trick because your query is currently hurting my database. So please change this and adjust this. That's a presentation. You're teaching someone something. You're showing them how to do it. You're showing them how to work. The only difference of what you're doing is a larger audience. That's it. So using that sort of idea just means that, yes, I do know how to present. I've done it before. I've talked to team members. I've talked to my team. I've talked to these individuals. All I have to do is figure out how to do it in a little bit larger of a manner to get that going. Okay. So any questions on the 20 seconds of courage? No, I didn't take this picture. I don't have any cute kittens. Someday I might, but we'll see. I'm more of a dog person. Okay, no questions. All right, so how do you really help yourself to do things like this? And this is not my technique. This is not something I created or anything, but it's something I learned from a book I'll talk about here in a minute. Make a script. So in your head, the way I use this right now on a day-to-day basis is that I love donuts. Donuts are my favorite thing in the whole wide world when it comes to food. And frankly, I need less donuts in my life because I need to lose a little weight. So what do I do when I'm driving around and I pass a 7-Eleven and I know that there is a raspberry fritter inside there and it will be delicious and it'll be wonderful? That's the exact wording I cannot tell myself. What is the exact wording I need to tell myself? I need to say to myself, and my script is usually something like this: do not stop at that gas station to get that donut, because if you do, you're going to have diabetes and you're going to gain more weight and you're going to be dead before you're 60. Now, I know that sounds a little dark, but it's very specific and it's very blunt and it works for me. And these are the important things that you need to do for a script. This script helps you when you're in those situations where you're like, I can't do this. You're telling yourself over and over again, I can't push this button to submit this presentation. Yes, you can. You need to have the script that says, I'm just doing this to get started. I know I can do this. I can get help from people like Pat. I can get help from other people. I can do this and I can push the button and get started. So making that script helps you to figure out what you want to do to really push past that sort of thing. And honestly, I use these scripts for everything in my day-to-day life, whether it's related to donuts or anything else that's going on. I don't want to get a task done. I really don't want to go outside and weed certain parts of my yard. I really don't want to. But I tell myself, hey, I really want it to look beautiful. We have parties coming up later on in the year. We need to do this now so that it can look good for our guests and things like that. So you have to find those scripts that work for you, but a script is very important to tell yourself over and over again in your head on what you should do to really make it a change in your life. It's about building better habits and building ways to change what you're doing. So, and again, I didn't create this concept. It comes from a book. The other people that use this concept heavily are Alcoholics Anonymous and people like that, or people trying to stop smoking. A lot of these use the same script idea to do this. This is a term and a method that's used all throughout the world all the time. So definitely try to make a script, help yourself get through it, help yourself to pause that introvert a little bit. So when it comes up and you're like, wait a minute, I can't do this, my introvert is coming out, I can't push this button, I can't do anything, you have a script in your head that helps you go through that. Okay. All right, here's the next
Just
big thing. Go ahead, Stacy.
just one thing is, for a lot for some things, I find that for me, my script is, if I do this thing, it's done, and I don't have to think about it ever again.
I like that. Yes, that's a great one. I'm a big to-do list person, and
Hmm.
I'm a big task list person, and a big what's it called? A bullet journal method sort of person. And I love to write down things like that. Like I need to get this done, the weeding or whatever. Scratching that off or crossing that off feels so good. It feels
That
so
little
good.
dopamine hit, that little
Yes.
endorphin, just, it's great. Anyways, yeah,
Yes.
so a lot of times the motivation is just, if it's done, I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yes. I love that. That's a perfect example, Stacy. Thank you. Okay, the next big one I get this all the time from new DBAs or new DBEs or anything else, and Postgres has a lot of this right now because Postgres is growing heavily, and we're growing database administrators, and we're getting more and more people, and they're like, but wait a minute, I saw this presentation from Bruce. Why would I ever present on something that he did? Because he knows everything about Postgres and he knows how to do this. Now, keep in mind, yes, there are lots of great technical experts out there. There are wonderful presenters in our community that do an amazing job. But a lot of the times they don't have the same perspective as a brand new person coming into the system. And there's going to be some other brand new person that wants that same perspective. Because some of us, and I caught myself as this, I've been doing this for a long time in my database career. So sometimes I'll forget the very simple things like, oh, we really do need to set up a backup to be done this way. We don't just need to do this. And a person with a new, fresh set of eyes will give you that perspective, and you can present on that perspective. So don't ever think that when it comes down to a presentation, just because someone else has done it, you can't do something differently or something that is just as well. You have a perspective that no one else has, and that's that important thing. Putting that perspective into the presentation makes it different than the other presentations that are out there. So I get this all the time from brand new DBAs. I get this all the time from people in the community. What should I present on? How should I present on? You know, what if it's already out there? Trust me, you have a different perspective. I'll add to this, the number one question I get is, what should I present on? And I always say the same thing. Present on what you are most passionate about for your first presentation. Do not present on something that you're not sure about. Present on something that you are passionate about. And the reason I say that is because passion shows. When you present with passion, when you're very interested in the topic, when you really, really want to talk about it, it's going to show in your presentation. And you're going to get a better presentation because of it, because you're very interested in that topic. If it's something like, oh, I just learned about this yesterday and I want to speak on it now, that's not as good. Okay. So you really want to get something that you're passionate about. Now, I will say the next best thing you can do, though, is to learn about something, present on it. It is a great way to learn about a topic, but I don't suggest that for your first one. I suggest that for something down the road. If you say, I want to learn about, merge statement or something else, then great, learn about it and make a presentation around it, and that'll make you learn it even better because you have to know all these other things about it. So you have nothing to offer? Totally not true. Absolutely, you do. This picture in here for this is when you do your first presentation or when you do any presentations, try to tell stories. Stories are very important. I've done a few stories in this presentation already. I'll do a few more as I go through. People remember stories. I have another presentation that I've done for a bunch of college students, and I tell those college students about the time that I dropped the database. And I not only dropped the database, I dropped the backup, I dropped everything about it. So we literally did lose about an hour's worth of data from the customer and everything else. I did that. Okay. And again, this was not early on in my career. This was 5 years ago. I did this at a company I worked at. I was not fired over it. Okay. So I talk about this and I explain this experience, and I kid you not, I've had people on LinkedIn write me and say, "Hey, I really loved your presentation. I remember you as the guy that dropped the database." And that's what they remember. That's what they remember about the presentation. So stories matter. People remember stories. So if you can make your presentation into stories and you can tell stories, it will make a million times difference than putting facts onto a slide. So always tell a story inside your presentation. Okay, any questions on this one? I think we're going good here. I probably didn't say it right at the beginning too. This is not a terribly long presentation, so hopefully we'll get some interaction and discussion going on throughout this as well. But again, we have some time. We got plenty of time. So here's the steps really in getting ready for presentations or getting started or getting involved in the community in any way. And when I say involved in the community, I'm mostly talking about presentations right now, but this goes true for blog posts. This goes true for making Twitter posts or any of the other new social media. Anything that's related to you getting in there and getting into the community, these things are really what matters. Start with why you're doing it. Always say to yourself, why am I doing this? I'm doing this to better model in my career, but myself, and to improve others. That's really what you're doing when you're getting into the community. Have passion in everything you do. I always say that over and over again. Tell a story. If you want to look up an amazing storyteller that shows you how to present and talk, look up David Phillips on YouTube. He's one of my favorite presenters that shows how to tell a story, and he has these great TED Talks on telling a story. I tend to watch them 2 or 3 times a year to try to get better at my storytelling capabilities. I'm still working on it. Pause the introverts. So this one is just where you really have to say to yourself, you have to have that script in your head that says, I need to do this to make a change in my career and to make myself better and more involved in the community. You have to pause the introvert for some amount of time. You can't change being an introvert. Trust me. I know lots and lots of people that 100% go to a conference and they interact and they enjoy the time and everything else, but then a day afterwards, they don't talk to anybody. And I do it all the time too. When I organize entire conferences with 500 plus people, the Sunday after it, I do not work on the conference at all. I try to relax. I try to do nothing else. I try to just sit down and basically, recharge a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's exactly what you need to do. But you do need to be able to pause the introvert enough to get through some of that time and then use whatever time you need. And if you need to do it every night at a conference or at an event or anything else, if you need to go and not be around other people, then great, do that. Whatever works for you is what you should be doing. But you do need to think about it so you can handle it. And the last one, willpower is not the answer. They talk about this heavily in this book. This is the book I was talking about. This book is called Change Anything. I really love how they lay down making change in your life, both through scripts, both through visiting your default future and change processes. The same people that wrote the book Influencer, which is a common business book for a lot of teams, wrote this book as well. Influencers are a lot more for teams and groups of people. This is a lot more for a person to really make change in what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I really love this book. This one I probably read once a year or so to remind myself of the techniques and the processes of what to do. So this is a really good one. It's only about 6 hours on Audible if you're an Audible person. So it's not a terribly long read. Might be 7 hours. But it's one I really, really enjoy. So if you get a chance, take a look at it. They just happen to live here in Utah. So I live in Utah. We actually got to talk to Al Switzer, who was one of the co-writers of it. It was a really cool experience to see. Um, Life's a journey, enjoy it. I tell people that all the time, is that, get out and enjoy those moments too when you get a chance. Go visit a river, sit in it. That's what I try to do as much as possible. I threw in some of these resources if you're looking for different things to talk about and different things to do. This one's geared for Postgres, but keep in mind, you can find blogs out there for all sorts of things on how to write a presentation, how to get an abstract ready, searching for any of those things. These are the common ones that I use currently in our Postgres community. So this is just kind of where I focused my time and energy. These are the resources I went to more than anything else. Again, you don't really have to keep the page. I'll share out the slides so that you can get all the information from it. All right, and that kind of ends and concludes what's UGE, John asked. So I was going to say, what are any questions or other questions that you guys have? UGE is called Utah Geek Events. It is a not-for-profit 501c3 that I use to put on corporation events in my community. So I put on conferences here in Utah, and Utah Geek Events is what does that. So I apologize, it was kind of still on there. I use the slide deck for other presentations too, and it's kind of a common one we use. So questions related to presenting and how to get started.
So one of the things that I hear from for people who are thinking about presenting for the first time is, well, how do I pick something to talk about? Because when you're dealing with a technical topic or pretty much any topic, there's sort of an infinite number of things. So what would you recommend there?
What you are most passionate about is the first thing. So if you are passionate about performance tuning, go do performance tuning. The first presentation I ever gave, and I was using Microsoft SQL Server, was how to pull out index stats, information about performance stats and things like that, put it into Excel, and then put it into a pivot table. And that was my presentation. And it took me about 25 minutes, and I gave it to a user group. But I was super passionate about performance and how to measure it and show it. And so that's what I presented on first. Start with what you're passionate about and then find a need out there in the community. Ask others, see what other people have presented on, and then you can learn something about that topic and present on it.
Yeah, because one of the things that when we're looking for speakers for PUG is I say, what interesting problem came up for you at work?
That's a good
Tell
one
us
too.
about what the problem was
Yep,
and how it was solved.
yep,
Because if you're having a problem, other people are too.
yep,
And then there's like, oh
yeah,
no, it's really unique to our system. I'm like, no, no, I
no,
assure you it is not.
yep, yeah.
I assure you
For
it is
sure,
not.
you could absolutely roundtable as well. We at a lot of my user group meetings, we will open general roundtables and say the user group meeting is nothing but a roundtable where we're going to discuss issues we've had in the last week or two or last month for each company. So somebody comes up and said, we had this huge replication issue and we couldn't get this replication working, and then everybody discusses it. Or somebody else will come and say, I couldn't get my backups to work properly and they were not running, they were running really slowly. What do I do? Those sort of things are great ways to get started and to get people presenting and talking to each other. So,
And also, your first conference submission doesn't have to be, a 3-hour tutorial at a
right.
national conference.
No,
Pugs are always looking for speakers, hint, hint.
yep,
And there are, multiple Postgres pugs, um, in North America and all over Europe, and some, I think there's one in China and a few in Africa. So there's really large potential audience out there. And doing a short presentation of Pug is a really good way to work out the first time speaker nervousness.
yep. The way my path, what I always suggest when I because I have a speaking 101 talk as well. It's specifically about getting ready for speaking. This one's more about driving you into the community and doing stuff. But if you're literally sitting down to completely set up a presentation, my speaking 101 is your path is a brown bag lunch to your team or some sort of lunch to your team. So get your other DBAs together and do the presentation to them. That's it, just them. And then you just have it right there in your company. Get feedback from that because you can get good feedback. Then go to your pug and whatever user group you want or whichever user group works, meetup, whatever it is, go to that group and then start to submit to the conferences of some sort of regional conference if you have one, national or something like that, and then keep going from there. I always suggest if you can try to present 3 times before a big stage, you're going to be a lot more ready for your presentation. 3 times is kind of what I always do as my standard benchmark for any new presentation. Present it 3 times before you have to fully present it in person. And you don't have to do that on stage in public. Like you can present to your family or something else. They'll be really bored, but you can do it. Um, present something, say the words 3 times helps you to remember it and memorize it.
Do we have questions, comments? Looking for raised hands. I'm checking chat. Um, yeah,
And
it's go on, Pat.
I was going to say, any suggestions from anyone else that I forgot something that you'd like me to
Oh,
add?
let's see. We have are there venues that are more or less accepting of presentations that involve commercial commercial products?
So it's a yes and no. Um, a, a marketing presentation, a full-on marketing presentation that's really just about a product is typically not very accepted inside user groups or in conferences. And I say typically because it really depends on the user group and the conference that you're doing. But there is plenty of times that that is a great thing to show this presentation of how to do this. Things like Snowflake and some of the other larger ETL tools are becoming really huge presentations because they're so heavily used. So you absolutely could get something like that, but make sure you ask the audience or ask the user group first. Say, I'm doing a presentation on this technical thing that is a commercial product. Is this acceptable in your group? So, Stacy, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so if it's about technical features, how to work with, how to solve problems in a commercial product, that is generally acceptable. If it's
Mhm.
simply a marketing slide deck, that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
Um, Pretty much every conference I've ever worked with has had that standard, and it's what we use here at PUG is, you obviously are going to talk about your product because you're talking about working with it, but it does need to be from a technical user standpoint, and not just marketing sent me. um,
Yeah.
Now, the exception to this is some conferences, for example, PGConf NYC, at certain levels of sponsorship, you get a slot in the sponsor presentation track, and it's a dedicated track separate from the main tracks, and you can market all you want in those. But again, those are specifically associated with certain sponsorships. So that would be the exception.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent question, John. Thank you.
So, Pat, just going back to your experience before you started speaking and being involved in the community, um, how would you say that making that choice has shaped your career?
So I'll tell a story. So way back in 2004, I'm kind of old. In 2004, I was at a conference in Orlando, Florida. The conference is the PASS Summit. It's one of the largest SQL Server conferences in the world. Um, and I was sitting there next to two other people. And when I went to this conference, I said to myself, I have to come out of my shell. I was very, very introverted, kind of alone then at that time. I did not do a lot of community work or anything else. And I said, I have to come out of my shell and I have to talk to other people because at where I worked, I didn't have any other DBAs to work with. I had nobody else to talk to. So it was very hard for me to do a lot of things because I was still learning and I really wanted other people to talk to about it. So I went to this conference with that intention. And I happened to talk to two people next to me in that session, asking them what they liked about the session. And that's one of the key icebreakers I'll always tell people. People always say, well, what do I say to the person next to me? I'm like, you're in the same session. There's a good chance you either have the same problem or you're interested in the same thing. So you can ask them, what about this session do you like? Or what are you interested in this session? That's immediate icebreaker for anybody sitting next to you. So I sat next to these two people. The two people happened to be Thomas LaRock and Alan Kinzel. Thomas LaRock became the future president of the PASS organization, and Alan Kinzel was one of the project coordinators. And those two of us all spent the rest of our next 10 years basically volunteering and helping that organization together. We not only spent time together, we communicated all the time offline so we could talk all the time, and we helped each other get jobs. And much of my career is because of that moment that I started to talk to other people and I met people in the community and I got jobs just because of that, because people were recommending me for different things because of my volunteering and my community work. So it made all the difference in the world to be out there in that community and doing those sessions.
Yeah, it's because for me, that my first Postgres conference was PGCon in Ottawa in 2010, and I wasn't even actually involved in Postgres community at the time. My spouse was at the conference, and I was going to go tour around Ottawa and see the museum and do things. And our then PGX's then CEO Josh Burkus said, "Hey, could you just help out at the registration desk for the morning rush, and then go on your merry way?" And I said, "Sure. What's an hour at the registration desk?" And 3 days later, I was still at the registration desk.
Yeah,
And one thing led to another. I got hired by PGX.
yeah,
I got on the board of PGUS. I'm now the president of PGUS. uh, running conferences and doing all kinds of things. So it really just, if you are really, really shy and you don't want to start with doing a talk,
Hmm.
volunteer for conference staff.
Volunteer.
That
Yep.
is, it's a great
Yep.
way because you're busy, you have things to do.
Yep.
Everybody sees your name on your name tag,
Yep.
and but you have specific things. You have an assigned role. It's a comfortable identity. It's
Yep.
a container, and socially it creates an identity for you, but also boundaries. So people know, oh, you're at the registration desk. I can ask you for my name tag or ask you when lunch is or whatever.
Yep.
Um, and that's a great thing to do. Be a room host.
Hmm.
You only have to actually talk for about 2 minutes to introduce the speaker and then to wrap up at the end. There, it being on conference staff is a great way in.
Oh yeah.
You get to know people, people get to know you, and then eventually, maybe you get comfortable enough with that role that you feel like you can move into a speaker role.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Volunteer. I started to branch outside of conferences related to technology when I started helping at anime conventions as well. I help at anime conventions, Ren fairs, all sorts of things out there. And I learned much more about conferences and how to manage them and everything about them because I volunteered at other places. And I'm known in those communities now. People see me and they're like, oh, it's bad. And we can talk to them about this thing or that thing because they see me at those communities. So it's a great way is to volunteer and to be part of the community that really leverages it so much further. And again, it gets you ready for those things like layoffs. People always say, how do you prepare for a layoff? I said, well, you go to community events. You make sure that other people out there in the community know who you are. So when that situation comes up, you're available and people know, hey, they've been out here helping and doing that. So that's one of the biggest things you can do.
Wow, great. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised.
Yep,
Um, oh, we have a thank you for the presentation. I enjoyed it. Comment
appreciate
in the
that.
chat.
Yep.
Um, so if there are no other questions going once, going twice. Oh, what do we have
Thanks,
here?
ads.
Oh, great. Yes. Oh, hands. Okay. So, let's see. All right. Okay. So, Um, thank you so much, Pat. That was very helpful and informative.
Yep.
I mean, I personally am biased. I do think community involvement is important,
Yep.
but I'm not coming from
We
exactly an objective perspective on that.
we're
You
the same, Stacy. We're both the same. That yeah, I agree 100%.
know,
Like I said, it has really made a huge difference. Not only my career, so many people around me too. So many people that are in the different communities will say the same thing when they say, "Oh yeah, that's why I'm
mhm,
involved," is because you get so much more advantage in the future when it comes to jobs and other things like that because of
mhm,
your community involvement.
mhm. And
So,
just supporting the community because particularly in Postgres, which is all open source and not backed by a corporation.
mhm,
It's 100% volunteer. Everybody
yeah,
who works on it is a volunteer.
yep,
So it's like, well, if you like Postgres, then get involved with the community to help keep the project going and growing.
yeah,
Um, so
exactly.
like it's one of the things that I feel really strongly about is I'm kind of living with it. I need to give something back.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
um, great.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. That was very helpful
Great.
and informative. And so let's see. So again, thanks to PGUS for sponsoring our meetup. Thanks to PGX for sponsoring the video. Our next PUG, San Francisco Bay PUG, will be August 9. We need a speaker. Hint, 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 hint.
Hmm.
Um, it's hopefully this will inspire you all to like start submitting ideas and we'll be awash in speakers. It'll be great. Um, After that, coming up, as Pat mentioned, PGConf NYC, October 3 to 5. The presentations have been selected and posted. The schedule isn't finalized, but all the talks have been selected.
Hmm.
Tickets and sponsorships are available. The hotel block closes September 11. That's not quite 2 months. And so register, get your hotel room. We did record this. We'll process the video, clean up the ends. post it to YouTube. When the video is ready, I'll post a link on the Meetup page. I'll send it by email, and it'll also be on our social media. And speaking of social media, you can find us on Twitter at Bay Area Postgres. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you again in August. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, everybody.